today we're not going to have a work day. This is why we're calling in or sharing this time from the Hermitage. And it's a beautiful day for working, not too hot, and lovely outside. We want to make sure that things are lovely inside also. And I was reflecting on the beauty of coming together, working together, or in the monastic life, living together and sharing in everything, basically, to sustain and support the life and the practice. It's really important, I think, to consider how we interact with the people we live with or people that we work with, and how we come to the experience of working together. If we can prepare ourselves a bit to work in harmony, to find ways to be helpful to each other, find ways to be aware of what the people around us are doing and needing as we're working, it can make the process and the practice go so much more smoothly and beautifully. So the passage that comes to mind in the suttas is about Anuruddha and his two friends, Nandiya and Kimbala, when the Buddha visits them. And this text actually shows up in two different suttas in the middle length discourses. The one I'm going to read from is number 128, the Upakilesa Sutta. And in it, when the Buddha comes to see them, he says, I hope Anuruddha, it's actually in Pali, it's Anuruddhas, it's plural. It's like he's speaking to all three of them and using Anuruddha's name in plural, the Anuruddhas. I hope that you are all living in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. And they respond, surely, Venerable Sir, we are living in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. And then he says, but Anuruddha, how do you live thus? How do you do that? He said, I think it's a real gain for me. It's a great gain for me that I'm living with such companions in the holy life. I maintain bodily acts of loving kindness towards these venerable ones, both openly and privately. I maintain verbal acts of loving kindness towards them, both openly and privately. I maintain mental acts of loving kindness towards them both, openly and privately. And I consider, why shouldn't I set aside what I want to do and do what these venerable ones want to do? And then I set aside what I want to do and I do what they want to do. We're different in body, but we're similar in mind. And the Venerable Nandiya and the Venerable Kimbala each said the same kinds of things, adding, that is how we are living in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. And then the Buddha says, good, good. I hope that you all abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. And they said, surely we do abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. And then the Buddha says, well, how do you abide that way? And they answer, Venerable Sir, as to that, whichever of us returns first from the village with alms food, prepares the seats, sets out the water for drinking and for washing, and puts the waste in the waste bucket in its place. Whichever of us returns last eats any leftover food if they want to. Otherwise, they throw it away where there's no greenery or drop it into water where there's no life. And he puts away the seats and the water for drinking and for washing. He puts away the refuse bucket after washing it, and he sweeps out the refectory. Whoever notices that the pots of water for drinking, washing, and the latrine are low or empty takes care of them. If they're too heavy for him, he calls someone else by a signal of the hand, and they move in to join by joining hands. But because of this, we don't break out into speech. But every 5 days, we sit together all night discussing the Dhamma. That's how we abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. So it's interesting that being diligent, ardent, and resolute is really just this way of doing mundane chores together in harmony. And of course, there's the quiet, and there's the speaking together about the Dhamma every 5 days, all night long. It's very sweet. I think sometimes we think diligent, ardent, and resolute means I'm, sitting in meditation until my blood dries up and my sinews turn to dust. But to see this kind of cooperation, it may sound a little too ideal, because who is attentive all the time or calm and feeling kindly all the time? Well, that's not normal human life, right? We have issues arising in ourselves. We worry about things. We have past memories coming up, or we see the faults in others, and we maybe have feelings that come up and so on like that. It's like, how do we work with real life when it's not so harmonious? So one of the things that I think is beautiful is to look at the times when working together or being together is harmonious and beautiful. And of course, we're coming together today here as friends. We have this same aim of doing something beneficial for the community. And we have this opportunity to, we are all practitioners, so we all, value the kind of self-reflection and mindfulness and wise attention, and that we have been studying and practicing for a long time. So that all really helps, right? It's not always the same when you go to work, and people are not conditioned in the same way. And we all have defilements that arise. And so how are various people going to be handling that makes a big difference in how harmonious the group can be. However, if we reflect on our own part in it, it might be possible to really bend the mood, the kind of atmosphere in a good direction. One of the things that I think that some of the conditioning that we have can also be cultural. That can be a positive, a support, or a challenge to overcome. And when I was thinking about this topic and I was thinking about working together today, one of the images that came to my mind was my mother when she would come with me to visit in Thailand. And we would go to various places with the monks. One of them was Pujam Gahom, this monastery that is quite remote. and there's a hike, kind of a bit of a strenuous hike, going up to a cave they called the Tea Cave. It was a place where the monks living in that remote monastery would come together to have tea in the late afternoon. And the monks would take us up to this tea cave. And my mom, she was probably in her late 70s or early 80s doing this. And there was a layman that came with us. And she said every time, she needed a little support to climb up a rock or something, his hand would be right there to help her. And she said she didn't even like notice his presence. It wasn't like he was hovering. It wasn't like it felt like he was, in any way intrusive. But as soon as there was a need for help, he was right there to help her. And this is something that I've noticed, and some of the Western monks have talked about, that the Thai people very much have this sensitivity when working together. Like the monks here in this sutta, they'll see someone needs help with something, they'll just come over and help. And I feel like in my culture, in my conditioning, there's so much individualistic kind of encouragement to be very, self-sufficient. Someone comes over and they says, can I help you with that? Can I help you fold the sheet? Oh no, I've got it. I can do it myself. Can I help you lift that and carry that over? Oh no, I've got I can do it myself. And you just kind of like try to do as much as possible by yourself. And I'm not sure that that's the best encouragement for harmonious life. So really just reflecting, it doesn't mean that, there's a benefit to being, self-sufficient. And there's a benefit to being connected and cooperating with each other on more things. And so this is something to just notice. If we come, whatever our conditioning is, if we come to the circumstance that we find ourselves in with an attitude that is talked about here in this sutta, of this, loving kindness on all those three levels, body, speech, and mind, in our actions, even if we're in a situation where we're at work, people have lots of different conditioning, lots of different maybe challenges in their life. Can we look at them from that perspective of loving kindness? Can we think from that perspective of loving kindness? Can we be forgiving for whatever they might have said or done in the past? Can we notice if there's some kind of necessary boundary that's going to help avoid a kind of conflict that maybe can actually be avoided and still get the work done? So these are some thoughts. Today we're going to be working outside. We're going to be dragging a lot of branches and tree trunks and all kinds of things around and put them in places where they're going to be away from the new kuti site that we're preparing, both for fire safety and to have enough space to work around it as it's built. And one thing that is important when we're doing that kind of heavy outdoor work is to really be aware of where other people are. If you're dragging this, big tree branch with, lots of brush or whatever, you want to make sure that people are not in the line of where you're going to be going. And not everyone has the conditioning to have that awareness of where other people might be when you move with something like that. And so this is something to start to pay attention to. It's like, okay, is the way clear? Is everybody safe? Taking time? knowing what the surroundings are like. And I think we can use this same idea almost as a metaphor for other kinds of situations that we're in when we're with a group of people trying to accomplish some task. How do we make this? And I'm thinking about someone who checked in today talking about work being really hard right now, and it can be hard for so many different reasons. We can have some compassion for ourselves and maybe take a fresh look at the other people that we're sharing this experience with. And, when we enter a conversation or we pick up a task that we're doing together, maybe I can check to see where they are. In the same way that I want to check if I'm going to haul this big tree branch with all of its leaves and branches down a path, make sure it's clear, make sure no one's in the way. Maybe in that same way with a mind of loving kindness. And then with speech that comes from that place of loving kindness and actions that are helpful, and checking in on, okay, where does my sense of self show up in all of this? Am I doing what I'm doing, jumping in or whatever to prove something or protect something? And sometimes it is necessary to protect ourselves. But can we do it in a way that also preserves our own peace of mind, our own loving kindness, our compassion for one another, our compassion for them, and our compassion and kindness for ourselves? Sometimes I hear people say that, they're tired of messages about compassion. They're just, maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they're burnt out. But that, the compassion for ourselves is equally important. So maybe we also have to check on, where am I, before I move this thing or I have this, take this action. Where am I? Can I orient myself to this in a way that's beneficial for myself and for others? And sometimes, we're conditioned to believe that if I do something that's beneficial for myself, it's at the expense of others. If I do something that's beneficial for them, it's at the expense of myself. And when that comes up, I think it's important to reevaluate and look at it, because anything that's really beneficial is going to benefit everybody. Sometimes we don't see things, we see it as that, I'm going to benefit or someone else is going to benefit, and there's no way for everybody to benefit. But I think if we step back further and we take a more Dhammic view of it, we can find that way. It's not like we have to cut up this pie and we each get whatever portion. It's like we can make the pie bigger, make it possible for this kind of generosity to go around, maybe. At least give it a try. So I think that's really the message I wanted to share today, to pay attention to our own states of mind and notice where others are, and come to this experience of our life with kindness and wisdom, and enjoy it. So, are there any comments or questions? Challenges? complaints. Yes, Paula and Phil.
Yeah, thanks. That was helpful. I have a couple of comments and then a question. One, I thought the idea of like how we're all individualistic, unlike the Thai, is so true. And that is conditioning. So trying to remember it is difficult. I remember driving up to Cloud Mountain, actually giving you a ride there and sort of being sort of sleepy, and you saying, Paula, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm okay. It's like, yeah, I could have just said, yeah, I am kind of sleepy. And you obviously knew I was sleepy, so you talked to me. But anyway, you and I had just sent you a questions by email, and you suggested it would be kind of connected to today's talk. So that's going to be my question. And that is, as some of us, and not everybody knows that there's some Upasaka trainees that are working on memorizing a sutta. And the sutta that I'm memorizing is from the simile of the saw. And it's just a portion of the sutta. And in that portion, the Buddha says that there's 5 ways that others may criticize you. And then he goes through the different ways of their speech, which I can go over. I'm not sure if you want me to say that part. And that when they criticize you, they can do it in one of these 5 ways. That's, a lot of us are familiar with that. It's like timely, true or false, gentle or harsh, beneficial or harmful, spoken from a mind of loving kindness or inner hate. And so, and then he says, you should train like this. Our minds will remain unaffected. We will blurt out no bad words, abide compassionate for their welfare with a mind of loving kindness and inner hate, and pervading that person with a mind of loving kindness, and then with them as a basis, pervade the all-encompassing world with a mind of loving kindness, free of hostility and ill will. And I'm just going to make a short comment that he doesn't say anything about having any kind of loving kindness to yourself there, which I noticed recently I needed to do, and you sort of talked about that. But that's, you can't cover everything in one sutta. Anyway, he goes on and he talks about something which Grace recounted, I think it was a week or maybe a week ago, about her story about being like dirt. And it came from the sutta. And he gives a simile. Suppose a person was to come along with a spade and a basket and say, I shall make this great earth be without earth. And they dig here, strew and there, strew soil here and there, spit here and there, urinate here and there. Be without earth, they would say. What do you think, mendicants? Could that person be without earth? And he says, no, because the great earth is deep and immeasurable. I don't want to read forever, but eventually that person is weary and disappointed. And he suggests that mendicants, you should train like this. Our minds will remain unaffected, starting with him, abide with all-encompassing world with a mind similar to the earth, abundant, exalted, and measurable, without hostility and without ill will. And my question for Aya was, I thought I understood this sutta. I apparently am not quite so sure about that, which is the great thing about like digging deeper into a sutta and trying to memorize it. You're like, oh, what does that mean? So my question was like, what, how, why does he use the earth? And he later on uses space and the Ganges River and a catskin bag and so forth in ways that one should be. And I didn't understand that completely. So maybe you can kind of help me out on that.
Well, thank you, Paula. I think it's really, well, I love this passage. I think it is good. You don't have to memorize the whole sutta. I'm glad you're not going to try, actually. I think the Buddha gave these similes in order for us to have some kind of um, visceral, no, I don't know if it's I don't know if that's the right word, but some kind of touchstone that really we can feel it. I don't think that I mean, in your message to me, you added a little bit more about, maybe this simile of the earth also relates to Dhamma, which is, you know, immeasurable. I don't think so. I think when we reflect on the passage that we want to use, we want to be careful, a little bit careful, that that's not just proliferation of the mind thinking about it. So that it's more like we just bring it into the mind and let it hang there, and just see what comes up about it more intuitively, reflection or contemplation rather than analysis. So we don't have to really make relationships or connections to other parts of, I mean, maybe those come up naturally, which is fine. But I think that what he's doing there with this, like, be like the earth or a cat skin bag, that's one that's kind of like not so immediately accessible for us in this culture, maybe. But the idea that, this skin is rubbed till it's completely soft and you can't possibly make it crinkle. What if I am in my heart and my mind so completely soft that no matter what someone says to me, you're not going to make me crinkle? What if I, in my heart and mind, am like the dirt, and there's nothing you can say to me that's going to make me, rise up and complain? The earth is just not going to rise up and complain. So when Grace talked about this, she very much, when I told her to read that sutta, she said the simile of the saw wasn't the thing that really came through. That's the dramatic component, but it was the simile of be like the earth. She said I had to be dirt to go into that meeting where, some of you will listen to it or have, or maybe you were there a couple of weeks ago, but she said this meeting was going to happen on Monday, and she was asking for advice because it was her manager and her manager's manager, and she knew they were gathering evidence to fire her. And she was having the HR person come along with her to it. It's definitely a kind of a showdown. And that her partner said, I want you to do everything possible to not get fired because we just can't really handle that right now. And she said that when she read the sutta, that's what jumped out. I have to be like dirt. And to have that frame of mind made it possible for her to really listen to what her manager was saying and to come back with something so reflective of that and soft that she said the conversation just took a whole different turn. She actually became friends with this manager later. I mean, she not only kept her job, but it sounded like things got so much better there. And so I just wanted to say, I think your question doesn't really need an answer. I think it's more like, just see if that image, any of these images in the sutta, really strike a chord. Like, can I really feel what it's like to be like the earth, to be that accepting? And then what's that like in my life experience? Does that answer your question, Paula?
Yeah, that helps. I think I was overthinking it, like you said. I just I just really couldn't figure it out. So now I like the earth one. Yeah, me too. But I don't look at it like Grace does as dirt. I look at it as nice, loamy garden soil. And like everything that you've told us is you have to make all these your own
Mhm.
to make them work.
Yeah.
Um, and I just found that sutta really helpful for me to bring up non-reactivity.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the other thing is I looked at the Pali with it, and I was looking to see if it said criticized anywhere. And
Mm.
there's nothing in the Pali that uses the word criticize. And I think even um, Bhikkhu Bodhi doesn't use the word criticize in his
Mhm.
interpretation, but I wondered if sometimes the interpretation is like that because of kind of the context.
Mhm.
Because I tried to use speak to you and it didn't work as well. Criticize worked better in my own interpretation of it to
Mhm.
utilize it for everyday use.
Yeah.
What do you think about that
I
question?
think that's a really good point. And we can be aware of the range of what the Pali really can uh, express, but also just, again, knowing the intention of the Buddha here to
Mm,
help us be able to be so balanced in the midst of whatever someone else might say to us, anything they might say to us. He'll take it as far as, hey, they could be cutting off your arms and legs and still you wouldn't have a thought of hatred in your mind, that kind of thing. So he's setting the bar incredibly high and really wanting to encourage this balance and this ability to listen and this ability to maintain our kindness and compassion. And then we can see examples like the monastics who were imprisoned, the Tibetan monastics who were imprisoned and tortured, and how
mm,
our focus was on maintaining their compassion. And that the reports we've heard of, they come out of that situation and they're kind of tested based on, whether they have PTSD, and they don't,
mhm,
because of the way they've been able to be with that situation. So we know it's possible. Most of us are dealing with very minor um, challenges and you know experiences comparatively,
mhm,
and yet it's hard to
mhm.
not lash back. It's hard to not have some kind of passive aggressive response. It's really like valuable to reflect on our behavior, our patterns, our conditioning, what we learned by watching our parents, for example. Not to blame the parents for things, because all of us as human beings have all this different conditioning, and how do we respond? And do we avoid? Do we retaliate? Do we, or can we actually metabolize it? Can we actually understand what aspect of this sense of self just got threatened, and
Yeah,
how we can be like the loamy garden soil, which is often very accepting. you know, you know, yeah,
well, I found this sutta like the best thing so far ever to avoid reactivity. So I highly recommend it to everyone. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Paula. I know that took a long time, Marilyn, but you wanted to say something. Are you still up for it? Did we
Marilyn might
lose
have had to go.
Marilyn? Did
She
you
woke
have to
up
leave?
early. Yeah,
Oh, shoot. Okay.
it's okay.
Yeah. Isaac?
Thank you for that. I really appreciate, and I feel that this example that you shared about the pie will stay with me. I think it's something that can be used in our everyday life because when we work together, there's a lot more opportunity than the individuality and this example of cutting the pie and we're all going to have less of it. But if we have a bigger pie, then there's more. So that visual is really a great way to be able to even bring it into the business world, which is all competitive. We have to be against each other. And I've been trying to talk about this in our own industry, which is about meditation, but it's so competitive that we can be able to like bring resources of how meditation can help people in different aspects of like measuring and so I appreciate that. And then the other a question about compassion and suffering. Um, Going back to my, the situation with my family, I'm seeing a cousin of mine be in the midst of suffering, um, and also not see his own doing that's causing the suffering. So, as an outsider witnessing, how can I help him to come into a state of compassion instead of carrying so much hate and um, volatility around the situation?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, the trouble with helping people, of course, is that they need to want it. So if you want to kind of like the Buddha would so masterfully kind of ask a question or say something that would be intriguing, and then someone would say, "Tell me more about that." So if that happens with your cousin, then you've got the door open and you can actually offer something into it. And when we do, or before we even ask that question or make that um, invitational statement, it's good to look at, do I do this myself? How do I do this? Do I create my own suffering through my own conditioning? Of course we do. It's so common, you know, and we may have difficulty seeing how that's happening. We may be looking outside ourselves for the cause, and that is not so productive. So if we ourselves look, do I do this? And then learn from that, we have a clear space to stand to share with someone else. And it's important to listen if they're willing to talk about what they're experiencing and see if there's, what kind of permission we have to offer things. I thought what you said about a competitive approach to offering meditation, very intriguing. It's like, what? um, and I get it, because it's anything with that we try to make happen in this culture, right, is likely to be cast in that kind of competitive attitude. And I think it's a great gift for you to bring that um, awareness that this can just be a gift that you're giving. And it's a beautiful shift to make what we're doing, what we're offering when we work, a gift. And then there's, a certain amount of faith that we can cultivate, that whatever gift we give, even if we don't see the results immediately coming back, there will be positive results. We can't give the gift with that in mind, that, oh, I deserve this result or that good thing to happen. But more like, if we really make things a gift in our life, whatever we're doing, and then good results come back. We have to kind of separate and be aware of our desires for results, and just let that take care of itself. People know this who have never even come in contact with the Dhamma. I should say that a different way. People know this who have never even come in contact with the Buddha's teachings, but everybody comes in contact with the Dhamma. And I remember my father talking about this. He was a farmer. He started a business. He was a good businessman. And he said, if I do an hour of work, at some point, somewhere along the line, I'll get an hour of pay. And it's like doing what we do because it's the right thing to do, and having the faith that it's going to work out, without that, oh, I need to get something out of this. I need to get the best part of the deal. I need to get, no. I loved what he said, and the way he did things.
Again, that's a huge perspective shift. If I may ask and offer something, we're in the space of addressing PTSD and trauma, especially for veterans and other communities that are suffering. And the institutions that we work with want to see results. Our gift is to be able to provide the resources to address the root cause, but they want to see that it's working. So all of the data gathering and everything else is to be able to show that the work that we're doing is working. So then they can go get more. So then it becomes like, here's a gift that we're giving you, but it has to be like, what is it doing? How is it doing it? And I don't know what the right balance is.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
To do it is to make the data gathering also a gift. It's all a gift. So you gather the data because it's helpful for people to see the evidence. John Kabat-Zinn did such a great job of this so early on with mindfulness-based stress reduction. And you probably know all about that. The intake form, when people would describe their condition, their pain, their mental attitude, and all of this, and then what happened after their working with this program. And it's very, you have all your methods for gathering the information and documenting it. This is also a gift. Yeah. Hello.
So you were saying earlier, you were talking about when there's challenge or conflict coming from defilements from everybody, that it's not the right way to look outside ourselves, right? Like you said, that's not productive, like looking outside.
Well, looking outside to blame someone else for the way you feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the way that I hear that is, like, one thing you can do is, whatever situation you're in, you're going to be with people. So if there is a conflict or disagreement, then what I could do is I will do whatever I can, even if I expect a certain challenge, but I'm going to do it anyway to the best ability that I can. And if I know that there's going to be a certain, outcome and it's likely not going to be the way that I think it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I continue to do it like as much as I can. And whenever I do like a little bit, try to put as much good intention into it as I can, like not expecting any specific outcome.
Yeah.
And if I need to, then I pull back a little bit in a way, not because I don't want to contribute, but it's because it's how I am able to best be kind to myself and others, right? That's like the paradigm.
Yeah.
And keep continuing to see, okay, where can I contribute? Like, how can I, like, don't expect the relationships to remain the same because it could change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just when I first heard it, it sounded like, well, no, I can't. Just can't be me changing, right? Like that's where I was. That's where I was a little bit.
I mean, there are a couple of things that come to my mind, and see if I'm touching on the right point. When I say look at ourselves to see, it's not that we also want to see what's happening out there. We want to understand. We want to try to understand what's really motivating people, what are they afraid of, or what are they needing? Like there can be all kinds of reasons. And when we look at ourselves, if we're angry, if we're upset, then we don't want to put the blame out there, even though maybe something horrific could have been done. Really something very, very, kind of wrong. And yet our reaction is what we have control over, and our working with how we feel and what we can do internally is where we have the power, and also we can become more like dirt. So it's not like we have to take the hit. It's not like that. It's like we can build up our resilience, our wisdom, our understanding, our compassion. That's a benefit to us, whatever happens in this situation. We can also take the longer view that this situation, like you said, it's not going to stay the same. It keeps fluctuating. You may have trouble with someone that, like there may be just kind of a grading kind of karmic, maybe kind of mismatch in the personalities, some kind of like, and then, pretty soon that person's gone from the team and you're still there, or whatever happens, it's going to change. The question is, how do we use this to practice, to develop? And like you said, what you said, I thought sounded very wise, like looking for the ways you can contribute, but then knowing, well, this really isn't working, or if I put more effort into it, it's really not gonna like produce anything worthwhile. Maybe I step back, reflect, and like take a different approach or something.
Yeah, where I had a hard time with that line of thinking is, so whatever interaction I have, I will have my perception of how that went.
Yeah.
Right. So perception, feelings, all impermanent, and those interactions can be perceived in many different ways. I just have my own perception, and I try to think of, well, that's just myself. That's just, how I interpreted that situation. But that's not always. I can't always be that equanimous, right? Like I'm just going to react sometimes. And so if I find that I can't let that go, well, then I'm gonna avoid, I'm gonna like do different things to like, sometimes I just have to be kind to myself and others. That's how, I mean, I wanna not keep going down this road where I feel like everything's on me to
change it.
Yeah. And sometimes I realize it doesn't have, maybe there doesn't need to be change. Maybe it's just like a perception thing, right? Maybe there's just that, but sometimes I can't. Sometimes I can't get past it.
Yeah.
So in that situation, I feel like the best thing I can do to be kind to myself and others is to just avoid, or just.
It's not like avoidance is necessarily bad, but the avoidance we don't want is the avoidance of being present with our own experience. to avoid what's happening over there. Like, you know, even in the Vinaya, there are all these different ways to resolve conflict, ways to resolve issues when people break the rules. And the last one is cover it over with grass. Sometimes you just move on. Instead of move on. Yeah. 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 And we want to be careful to not make ourselves feel bad about something we shouldn't feel bad about. You know, it's like, yeah, there are going to be reactions and there are going to be, you know, like, what can I learn from it? You know, and we're not going to be perfect. And we can take into account that nobody's going to be perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes we can take too much on ourselves, out of balance. Holly?
I liked your talk about situational awareness, dragging branches around, not hitting people, and transitioning that to, you know, how do I behave? How do I view the energy, like when I come into a room full of people, approach a friend or a partner, and what that when I've done that, and like I remember it a lot, and then a lot of times I just don't. I just go into the room and I'm just immediately in the tangle of whatever's going on without much mindfulness. But when I do, and when like when I'm teaching dressage riding, I often approach the horse and rider in that way, with mindfulness for where are they today, both of them. And when I do that, it jumps me straight to compassion.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's where it takes me, which to me is like a different facet of loving kindness. But for me, the compassion shifts my view away from myself. So I just thank you for that, drawing my attention to that today. Any comments? Be appreciated.
Well, it sounds great. It's so true. And we learn so much from that kind of reflection afterwards. It's like, yeah, this is how it works kind of when I come in without preparing, you might say. And this is how it works when I come in preparing. And it's really interesting what our minds can learn and then start to take on as a habit, and it becomes kind of automatic. Like many years ago, I decided that I wanted to, you know, when you call somebody for customer service, which can happen a lot if you're doing technical work, for example, or whatever. And I thought, I want to catch their name when they say it at the very beginning, and I want to repeat it to them and call them by name. And that became a habit. And I noticed, like, you know, many years later, I would still like remember, you know, like when I'm talking to somebody in that capacity on the phone, without thinking about it, I would notice their name and call them by name. I mean, I wish I could do that with a lot of other things. There are a lot of things that I don't remember, don't, you know, pay attention to, but just to notice that the mind actually can be trained. You know, if we give it a little attention in that way. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Deborah.
So I'll say something. So it seems like what you're talking about is like this brings up, it encompasses everything: generosity, compassion, you know, loving kindness. And it seems like this working together is in the service of developing relationship, right? So
yeah,
I love this talk. It was great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, friends, I think we're about at that point where moving on to the next phase here. So thank you all. I hope you have a great day or night, depending on where you are. Good to see you all.